Hi little cherubs, how are we all this evening? Tonight's book is one that has got two stories in it, but we're only reading the first one, and it's called The Idle Bear. It is a book that's 21 years old, and it's Erin's book. So anyway, it's all good. It's by Robert Ingpen. The Idle Bear. What kind of bear are you? Asked Ted. I'm an idle bear. But don't you have a name like me? Yes, but my name is Teddy. All bears like us are called Teddy. Ted thought for a while, then said, Well, Teddy, I've been Ted forever, at least 50 years, I think. Me too, said Teddy, at least that long. We could be related, thought Ted and Teddy together. We are related, announced Ted, pretending he'd known for ages. How can you tell, Ted? Challenged Teddy. How do you know? Oh, I just know. Everybody has relations. I think especially where I come from, said Ted, beginning to wish it wasn't so. Where do you come from, Ted? From an idea, said Ted definitely. But ideas are not real, they're only make-up, said Teddy. You have to come from somewhere real to have relatives. Not relatives. Relatives, said Teddy, trying to hide his confusion. Ted remembered that everybody he had met had come from up the street and said, I come from up the street. What street? Asked Teddy. In desperation, Ted said, Up the street next to your street. What happens up the street? That depends, said Ted, now really confused. That depends on everything else that happens. That should do, thought Ted. Like what? Demanded Teddy. Ted tried to remember. When I was young, he began, I used to have a lot to do. I was as important as a bear can be. Ted paused, then went on. Later I was put away and taken out and put away and taken out and put away where? Interrupted Teddy. In a box. What sort of box? A bear box. I don't know, said Ted, just a box. Oh, said Teddy. Have you got a growl, said Teddy. I used to have one, but it wore out, said Teddy. Mine still works, said Ted proudly. At least I think it does. Don't you know? That depends, said Ted. Depends on what I do. If I stand like this, it works sometimes. Ted stood on his head as best he could. Look at him trying to stand on his head. Then he bent backwards. It's something to do with my tummy, but I've never seen it, Ted said, and stood on his head again. It's a very small growl, Ted, said Teddy. It's better than a worn-out growl, said Ted, feeling challenged again. It used to be very loud. I used to be full of growl. I used to be full of growl when I was young up the street. I'm full of straw, announced Teddy. Ted ignored that. It sounded reasonable, and anyhow, he was probably full of straw too, if they were related. But then scarecrows and cushions were full of straw, and the thought of being related to a cushion annoyed him. Ted was still thinking about cushions and scarecrows when Ted startled him by saying, Dogs. What about dogs, said Ted. Dogs come from up the street, announced Teddy. Ted thought, of course they do, and remembered Michael. He hadn't seen Michael for how long? Must be 40 years, thought Ted aloud. What, said Teddy? It must be 40 years since I've seen Michael. I wonder where he is. Michael who? Michael Wood, the dog next door up the street. Oh, said Teddy. Why do you want to wear the bandage? Asked Teddy. Ted looked sadly at his bandaged wrists. Oh, it's just because my paw wore out, he said. Like my growl wore out, I suppose, suggested Teddy, glad that Ted was not perfect. I suppose, said Ted, still searching for a clever reply. Then he had an idea. It gives me a worldly look, he explained. What does? Demanded Teddy. My bandage on my worn-out paw, said Ted. With that and me together, he went on, I am a worldly bear. He remembered that someone once had admired him and shaken him and told him he was a worldly bear. What's a worldly bear? Asked Teddy. One that's worldly, said Ted wisely. He was quite content just being worldly, without having to explain what it meant. That's part of being worldly. I'm an idle bear, said Teddy. I know, said Ted. You told me so. Don't you want to know what an idol is? No, said Ted. My owner is an idol, said Teddy, ignoring Ted. So I'm an idol too. Ted wished he knew what an idol was, and he's still thinking about it. Hope you enjoyed that one, boys and girls. Have a good night. Bye.